This is the Digital Savage Experience Podcast, hosted by Roman Prokopchuk, bringing you all things digital marketing, tech, business, and motivation. What's stopping you from becoming relentless in all aspects of life? Are you ready to become a digital savage? Let's get into today's episode.
Hey everyone, this is Roman Prokopchuk, and this is the Digital Savage Experience Podcast. Today I have with me Andy Schindling. Andy is the founder of TCP Youth Empowerment, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to unleash youth leaders, inspiring them to take charge of their future and reach their full potential. Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Roman.
My pleasure. So tell me a little bit about your journey. How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, so it's definitely a long journey. Growing up, I was always involved in sports. I was that typical athlete who just loved being at the field, did whatever I could to get out at the field. And when I wasn't at the field, finding ways to continue playing sports at home. My journey took me to being a professional athlete. I got drafted by the Orioles out of high school in 2004 and spent about 5.5 seasons with them. Got released in 2009 and then started my academic career, I would say, in 2010. And then 2015, I graduated from Towson with a degree in business. Knew I never really wanted to work for somebody else. So I had to figure out what it is I wanted to do, and kind of in the meantime, while at school, I got invited to the church and gave my life to Christ. And once I graduated, he put on my heart to give back to kids and help them, go out into this world and chase their dreams. And I think the journey that I was on from, a youth athlete in adolescence up until my graduation at Towson, I was able to look back and figure out what it was that led me to where I was, but also that held me back. And, I grew up in a typical household, on the outside looking in, both parents around and in the middle class, but nobody really knows what goes on in between the four walls. So there's a lot of friction and going on in the house, which created me to be a really shy kid growing up. Didn't really feel comfortable in the world other than being out on the sports field. That was my sanctuary, and I think that's why I excelled so much at sports, is because I felt free and in an environment that I could just be me and let loose and not have any worry in the world. But as I got older, I wasn't really too accustomed with communicating and navigating through the real world, and kind of led me to just be a little by myself, but only really gravitating towards those who really gravitate towards me. And that kind of led myself into some vulnerabilities and finding myself hanging around the wrong people, which ultimately led me out of baseball. And but also a big part of the driving force of why I started this charity and have this mission of unleashing youth leaders, and really trying to unleash the leaders that I believe are in all of us. That way we can reach our full potential, which I never felt, or I don't feel I reached, because I never felt like I was in charge of my future or even in charge of my life. Felt like I was just floating through like a dead fish, just because of those insecurities that I had about being in the real world, and which was all, a part of me based on my life growing up, from being in the house with the tension, from being bullied. So it really created some social anxiety, in which I never really grew out of until, recently, the last couple of years.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like we talked offline, I'm a foster parent. I've been a foster parent since June 2018. Me and my wife have had since then 20 kids in our home. So I kind of see the importance of that kind of structure and pushing kids and giving them the right message and some kind of role model figure to push them in terms of what they're capable of, and also in the right direction, because the kids that, stay with us are coming from seeing and being in experience of abuse, neglect, drug abuse by their parents, mental illness. So if that's all they see in terms of environment, that's going to obviously influence their, mental health, their personality, them physically, and who they're capable or who they're going to become if they kind of stay on the path without seeing that there's something more to life.
Yeah, certainly. That definitely became evident in my life, especially through my peers and not wanting to be in the house because of the tension led me to being out with my friends, which, looking back, they were my friends. I thought they were my friends, but they weren't the best friends. Those were, and kind of accepting what they did, knowing that it may not have been the right thing, but it was better than being at home. So that, like, as you mentioned, it's the environment we're accustomed to growing up in the household and even in our neighborhoods definitely plays a major toll on our emotional state and our thinking. And then as you get older, you find yourself in a rut, I guess, and find myself lost. And I think there's a lot of kids out there being lost right now, with kind of touching on what you said with the home life of maybe drugs or abuse, physical, mental. For me, it wasn't, I guess it was more mental. There was no physical abuse going on to me. But having a half brother and seeing the friction between my parents and me and my half brother, thinking it was my fault. I definitely felt, go out to society and try and escape that. You always usually find the wrong ways to release that pain. So I definitely, can see and agree with, the environment playing a big part in what we do and where we go. And again, that's just the driving force behind what I'm doing, is for kids not to get lost, have that mentor, that role model to push them and guide them and lead them out of environments that they may be in that aren't providing or guiding them or leading them in the right way. Yeah,
I think in that sense, kids or anyone, when they're dealing with something, they either fall into some kind of coping mechanism or a vice, or kind of block it out, put it kind of in your subconscious. But eventually you grow up and those emotions and memories start weighing you down and start impacting, you personally and professionally.
Absolutely.
So what motivates you to succeed?
Knowing that I never reached my full potential at the dream that I had. People always talk about, I dreamt about that as a kid, but honestly speaking, though, I literally dreamt it more nights than not about playing professional baseball, playing for the Baltimore Orioles, idolizing Cal Ripken. For me, it was either dreaming about baseball or I dreamed that people were trying to kill me. So I literally dreamt it, and having that opportunity in front of me and not taking full advantage of it is what drives me now for success, and making sure that I don't leave anything out on the table, or any stone unturned turn, or anything that could lead me to where I'm trying to go. I'm making sure I take advantage of it, and take advantage of the opportunities. Everybody has opportunities in life. It's what we do with them. And unfortunately, most of the time, especially when we're young, we throw them away because you can't really see that the opportunities in front of us when we're living it. So that's really the driving force, and really what's pushing me to be successful, is knowing that I had an opportunity and threw it away, and I'm not looking forward or even considering throwing this one away.
Yeah, and I think oftentimes you're kind of your own worst enemy. So you either don't see it or you're too afraid to take it. But then, 30, 40 years down the line, you're going to have that regret, what if? But if you do take it, worst case, you fail, you learn from it, and then you move on and take those learnings to something else that you're trying to do.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think you make a good point is even if we see it, we're scared to take that jump and go after it because of the fear of failure.
Yeah, and it's something new. I mean, humans have a tendency to stay in a pattern or a rhythm, and then when something is thrown that, takes you out of that, you become uncomfortable. And being uncomfortable is actually good because it leads to growth, and you kind of take that step past your normal routine, if you will.
Yeah, certainly. And that's a big part of our programs, and what we're doing is really forcing kids to be uncomfortable, because generally is when we're uncomfortable, we run, we hide, we clam up. And as you mentioned, there's really no growth without being uncomfortable, because if you're comfortable, you're never stretching yourself. And if you're not stretching yourself, you're not growing. So no, that's a great point you make, and a huge aspect of what we're doing with the kids that we're serving. Yeah,
and that kind of routine, or not pushing yourself to the limit or taking yourself out of your comfort zone, makes you complacent and doesn't let you reach your true potential.
Yeah, and crazy thing is, if you look world around us, in the situation we're going through with this COVID-19 virus, I think a lot of people are realizing the complacency that we've all had, just accepting daily life for what it is, going through the routines, and not really going out there and growing and learning and exploring what's really out there and what's really going on. And unfortunately, I think most of the world is going to be caught off guard with what may be happening in the future.
Yeah, I agree. So what's one thing you may have seen as a weakness in yourself in the past that you've turned around and utilized as a strength today?
How much time I got to explain that? First and foremost, I would say self-confidence. Like as I mentioned, younger, I had confidence, but it was only in sports. And, my self-confidence and self-esteem was not high at all, as a kid growing up. And even until probably mid to late 20s. And now I would say that's a strength of mine for sure, fully believing in what I'm doing and being able to be successful at it. I would also say what we just touched on, being uncomfortable. When you have social anxiety and I guess you're fearful of what's the world around you, you don't like to be uncomfortable. You don't put yourself in new positions and take chances or risks. And I think that's part of, the success I'm seeing now is I'm just taking those chances. One, because I am confident in myself and believe in myself. But two, is I know that there's no way to grow and no way to make the impact I'm trying to make if I'm not going to take risks. I don't have an education background, but I do after school and summer programming. I'm learning as I go, surrounding myself by the right people because I am confident now. And that goes on to, I would just say, the third, I guess, failure we would call it, is not surrounding myself by the right people. Too often we get tied up and consumed with hanging with our boys and doing what they want to do, and not focused on ourselves, not in a selfish way, but not focused on what we want out of life. We end up surrounding ourselves by people that aren't going to get us ahead in life, aren't going to help us pursue our passions and our dreams, and we end up living theirs. And now I've been able to, remove myself from those relationships. And I think that's also been a huge part in being successful now, is finding the right relationships and surrounding myself with people who are passionate about what I'm passionate about, and really trying to make the change and impact that I'm trying to make.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's also kind of focusing on something greater than yourself and kind of leaving a legacy, because I think in my 20s, I was chasing material things, titles, money. And then when I switched over to more of a giving, adding as much value as possible and being open to helping as many people as possible, I think those successes naturally came, because I think that's kind of like the right path to actually do it with.
Oh, yeah. I would 100% agree. You know, and when I was younger, it was certainly chasing the material things, you know, from money, from clothes, from jewelry, you know, what I could get in my car, whatever it may be. And then, you know, once the Lord put on my heart to serve and give, it just seems it's like a dramatic shift and change in the outlook of life, which has led to opportunities, you know, because I'm a firm believer, if you're out there trying to serve and you're doing the right things, then the right things are going to come to you. But if you're out there doing, you know, selfish, ambitious things, then, you know, eventually it's going to take its course. You're going to find yourself alone with nowhere to go. So I'm a big believer in that as well with you, is taking that mindset of how can I serve and help others? Because the way the world works is usually things come back around, and when you sow, you know, usually sowing what you plant water and plant the seeds in the water with. So yeah, I'm a big believer in that, man. So that's a great point, great concept right there.
And I think people nowadays, especially in 2020, in terms of attention span and everything else, are looking for instant gratification. So if they're trying to achieve something, if they don't do it right now, they think it's a failure and move on. But that kind of patience and doing as best as possible and giving back and outlasting everyone else in terms of what you're trying to achieve, that's oftentimes the people that are left over. That's the successful company or the successful person. They simply outlast it.
That's a good thought. I never thought about it in the outlasting way. But yeah, I think you're 100% right with that. You know, the patience, the endurance, the tenacity, to stick with it and endure. And I also believe that, you know, if you're doing and living the life that you're called to live, I think all that, what we just mentioned, the endurance, the tenacity, the perseverance, all that just becomes natural, because you know that you live in a purpose, or for a purpose that's much bigger than you. And at the end of the day, you know, the small things, at least for me, I tend not to worry about. And just focus on this big picture and this bigger plan and mission that I'm on, knowing that I'll be fulfilled at the end of the day. And I would hope, like you just mentioned, that I outlast.
Yeah, I agree. So I really appreciate you stopping by today. Can you let the audience know how they can find you or anything else you have going on?
Yeah, so you can, personally, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, at Andy Schindling, spelled SCHINDLING. As far as our charity, you can find us at TCP Youth Empowerment. We got some great programs going on here in Maryland. I encourage you to check us out. You know, we're adding content to our youth empowerment pages for kids in terms of leadership and self-management, and really trying to, get our knowledge out to the masses in the youth world to really help them become all they can be and help them reach their full potential. So I encourage you to check us out there and go to our website, tcpyouthempowerment.org. You can learn more about what we're doing. If you feel called and you want to invest in the lives that we're serving, there's opportunity to do that. And if you're local in the Maryland area, please reach out. We're always looking for volunteers and people to support what we're doing.
Awesome. Thanks again for stopping by.
I appreciate it, Roman.
This podcast has been brought to you by Nova Zora Digital. Find out how Nova Zora Digital can help your company grow online. Learn more at novazoradigital.com. Until next time, all you digital savages.